Welcome to the Infinite Wealth Podcast. I'm Cameron Christensen, along with our co-host Anthony Faso. We just wrapped up our interview with Joni Wolfswinkel. She's CEO of Real Property Management and co-founder of Texas Turnkey Properties. And in addition, she's also author of The Choice Is Yours. And that's what we talked to her about today as we interviewed about her book. Anthony, what was maybe a takeaway or two that you had today?
I think the title says it best. The choice is yours. I tell you, we didn't dive that deep into her story, which I wish we would have. But man, she had it rough.
She did have it rough. I can give a quick overview if you think that would apply. Is Joni? She grew up. She writes about her story growing up in New Mexico, and she talks about the family that she was kind of born into. But her dad was an alcoholic and later became addicted to drugs and actually passed away from that addiction. And she talks about growing up in that household and the abuse that took place, and also having her brother follow in those same footsteps. And so addiction was prevalent and almost expected in her family. And so she talks about some of the stereotypes, and she called them personal demons, right? Which is those voices in her head that just said, you're going to end up being like everybody else. And she talks about some of the experiences that she had growing up and how she overcame those. And what I thought was really moving was that, or maybe is really relatable, I guess would probably be a better word, is that at each phase of her life, she had this doubt, these self-talk that kind of came up. And what you realize is that, she had it as a young kid, she had it as a teenager, as a young businesswoman, and now as a very successful businesswoman. She still has those kind of negative self-talk. And what she shares with us at the end of the book are strategies to overcome that. And I found that very, very relatable to most people. I think everyone struggles with that to an extent.
Well, so my takeaway was this young girl who, there's also health issues.
Yeah.
There was some hearing issues, cleft palate. All these operations before she was 6 and growing up in this environment. And there was times where she had to do her schoolwork in the hallway because they was worried about a drive-by shooting, right? I just can't imagine as a kid what that does to you mentally. But you look at what she was through, and, a lot of people would just write her off. Like, she's just going to follow in the footsteps of her father. But, she made a choice that she was not going to follow those footsteps and made some intentional choices to bring her out of there. And to be from such a humble beginning to where she's at now, I think should be very inspiring for women and for men, anybody who's had a difficult childhood or in a difficult situation, that you can make some good choices and you can change things. So what were some takeaways for you, Cam?
In addition to kind of what I shared previously, what I would say was probably the biggest takeaway I had was the vulnerability that she showed, right? Is in reading this book, is there's a lot of stuff that I don't think most people would feel comfortable sharing, right? Most people want to hide kind of some of those experiences that they've gone through. And I think by sharing that, again, made it very relatable to a lot of people that you read it and realize, man, you know what, regardless of where we're at in life or the stuff that we're going through, everybody's going through it. And so really good book, and she offers some solutions or some suggestions on how she gets through it. So really enjoy the book. Again, The Choice Is Yours. I think you guys will really enjoy it.
Enjoy the episode.
Take care. I was just going to admit something, but I realized that we are recording, but I actually work out at a women's gym. Joni, thanks so much for joining us today. We are excited to have you on. If you could, maybe you could start with telling us how this kind of idea of even writing this book got started or came about.
Absolutely. And Anthony and Cameron, thank you so much for having me on here today. Second podcast, I was on the first episode, or one of the episodes with my husband. So happy to be back on here. Honored for that. So yeah, the whole book kind of started about a year ago, I guess, and maybe a little more longer than that. And just really journaling. So something that I do every day is journal. And I had actually been journaling about my, past and my upbringing and really was actually kind of therapeutic for me. And so, and Shawn was like, hey, you have an incredible story. I think you need to share it with the world. And so, I just, once I was done journaling with it, then I just turned it into a book.
Awesome. How did journaling come about? To be honest, I've heard journaling kind of talked about, and even in kind of our study groups and stuff, people talked about it, but I've never really started that.
Yeah. So, it's something that I started doing in college, really. And
Okay.
it's really to get my thoughts out. Like if I'm having a bad day or, just need some time to think, I'll just take my journal. And it's something that I do every day. It's part of my routine. But it just makes a huge difference in your life. You can look back at it and say, hey, you know what? Like every month I'll look back and say, oh gosh, I can't remember. I remember that situation and where I'm at today, man, like I overcome that challenge, and so it's extremely helpful to go back and kind of remember those things.
Now, what do you, without getting specific, but what do you journal about? Are you your vision or like what happened today, or what are you writing in your journal?
Every day is different, and it's typically, what I'm going through in life. A lot of times it's dreams and goals that I have, and like right now I'm actually on a fitness journey. I'm actually going to be competing in a competition in September, and so I'm journaling about that right now. It's the process and the struggles going through that, and what I have to eat and what how that's going. My workouts. It's really a process, and it's always something new depending on what I'm going through at that apparent moment.
Well, what would you say to I would say like for like I always, always curious what successful people are doing, like what's part of their daily activity, what are things they're doing, what are things they're not doing. And a common theme is journaling. As you can, right? For most, successful people. But I would tell you, for me, just thinking about having to write something out is just, I feel anxiety. Like I don't like writing, or even my penmanship's terrible if you see my webinars, right? But what advice do you give to somebody who wants to start journaling but never has, or maybe they're scared?
Yeah, and every person is different too, I think, and like Shawn's kind of the same way. And you guys all think, I'm sure you guys have thinking days, right? I don't know if you do, but I have like
some of us more than others.
Yeah. Okay. So on those days, and I know that some friends, they started off by recording themselves, like their thoughts, like what's going on in their head. And then from there starting to journal that out, and then it just becomes a daily routine, and that becomes a habit. So it's really whatever works for you, but I know that I do have some friends and colleagues that will record themselves.
Now, Joni, have you ever heard of the 5-minute journal?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never actually used it, but I have heard about it. Yes.
Okay. Actually, because I read your book and you made some references to your journaling, which coincide with the 5-minute journal. But as I'd said, I wanted to journal, really I didn't want to journal, but I wanted to do what other successful people were doing. So that led me to journaling. And I don't like expressing myself, handwriting it. So that 5-minute journal, to me, is a great way to get into journaling. I mean, it really walks you through what to do, because I've tried to journal. I'm like, well, what do I write about? Well, this thing is like, hey, name 3 things you're thankful for, right?
Yeah.
3 things that would make today great, right? And then at the end of the day, 3 things that that went well that day, and 1 thing you can do to change, and a daily affirmation. So if any of the things that you're thinking about doing, you just got to start.
Yeah,
You just got
absolutely.
to start. And the 5-minute journal, or just writing out on a paper, just anything to start.
And that's actually a really good point there, Anthony, because I think that for somebody that wants to start off, I think, expressing gratitude the first thing in the morning. So write down 3 things that you're thankful for. I mean, it's amazing. Like, if starting off your day with gratitude, your day is going to go pretty great compared to if you didn't. Not much can go wrong if you didn't express gratitude. And then from there, you can say, hey, like, what did I learn today? Like, is there anything that I could have done better, from today? So that's a great point. And I think anyone can, start with that.
From a novice or someone that hasn't journaled, and not to beat this to death, but when I think about journaling, I think about some pretty maybe vulnerable thoughts or ideas that somebody's putting down. And having read your book, there's quite a bit of stuff in there that I would say is pretty personable about your journey.
It is, yeah.
How difficult was that to kind of open up and share with people?
Oh gosh, it took me about a year to, say, hey, Jen, like, you need to let this go. Like, it was not easy. There's a lot of things I was extremely vulnerable in my book, and, kind of told everything of how I was brought up and the addiction with my brother and my father, and them passing. And so, all the struggles and challenges that I went through, but also the choices that I made in life to help me succeed. If it wasn't going through those difficult challenges, I wouldn't be where I'm at today.
I'm a firm believer, right, is that you got to model something, or maybe it's just the way that I learn. Is I'm usually a visual learner. If I see somebody do something, I feel like I can do it. And I loved reading your story because you really didn't have somebody there modeling a lot of this stuff for you. It was literally a bunch of little decisions, right, that kind of added up over time. If I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to go out tonight. I'm going to go and hang out with my grandpa and those things. And so, could you maybe talk to us about some of those decisions that you might have made along the way, and how you came to those conclusions?
Yeah. And so I'll kind of go back a little. And so, like, part of why I wrote this book to begin with was to empower women that they can, be the best version of themselves. We us as women, we are so hard on ourselves to begin with. There's so much negativity out there that we question our womanhood, we question our status as wives, our parenting skills, our entrepreneur skills, all that. And then society tells us that you can't do all of that, right? And but I mean, it's all in the mind. I mean, you can do anything that you put your mind to. And early on, I just saw that, like, seeing what my mom went through and the struggles. And she was my rock star. I mean, she worked 3 jobs to support my brother and I. One of the jobs, and she worked at McDonald's, and she worked graveyard. And so my brother and I, after school, we would actually go there and sit in the McDonald's booth waiting for her until she got off of work. I mean, we'd be on CNN right now if that happened today, right?
Yeah, you would. I was reading the summary of kind of her day, and I was like, when did this woman sleep?
Yeah, and so she did whatever it took to support us. I mean, that was just her lifestyle, and I saw that. And so seeing that was like, man, like, I need to help this woman. I need to do anything in my power to make sure that, I provide for her one day, because she is busting her butt to give us everything that we want,
Looking back, there was a bunch of really great stories. I'm going to put you on the spot here, but if you could look back and maybe pick one as kind of maybe a defining moment kind of in your life that kind of stood out to you, what might that be?
So the point in time when in the book, I talk about my father's addiction to heroin, and my brother's addiction to meth. And so, my brother kind of played that victim card, felt sorry for himself, and eventually killed himself. And so I think that was probably the turning point in my life, was like, you know what, like, I cannot live this way. Like, there is no way that I am going to repeat that cycle. And so I was terrified that I was going to be like them. And so I would just had, focus and drive since an early age that, I was not going to be like that. And I think that's it. Like, I had a deep burning passion inside me. And I think that's what a lot of people don't see, is that, maybe you have never been through a situation like this, but to succeed, you have to have that deep drive and passion. And I did, because I did not want to, it was life or death for me.
Yeah, it's just you use the word terrified, and you talk about fears and stuff, and their fear is a great motivator, right? It'll get you moving. And I actually really like the appendix. Auntie and I spent some time looking at the appendix that listed all of the fears that were in there.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the book, Joni. You can see all the dog ears I have.
I don't know if yay! But, that's awesome.
The appendix was amazing. Honestly, you can make a whole book on the appendix.
Right. I could have. Yes, absolutely.
And in the appendix, one thing you talk about is carving out what you call personal development days.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind explaining that to our audience?
Yeah. And so, we talked about early on about our thinking days, right? And so I'll take some time out. And it might not just be thinking, but it will be, spending some time listening to podcasts, reading books, really surrounding myself with, who I want to be, who I look up to. And I think it's important is that you have to surround yourself with, people that you want to look up to.
So with these professional development days, is all day you're listening to podcasts, or are you carving out time? Or
some days it is. Some days it's, I'll do a little bit of podcasting, then I'll do a little bit of reading. And then in between, I'll do some journaling. But the thing is, like, I block out a full day of, just my personal development day and work on myself.
And how often do you schedule those days?
Once a week.
Once a week. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Now, because your book is called The Choice Is Yours. And I would tell you, I know I've tried some of that calendar blocking.
Right.
And it's one thing to block it on your calendar, but the important thing is to follow through.
Mm-hmm.
Is to keep it blocked, because somebody will come to my office, saying you had a bad hair day or something's going on, and I'm trying to focus. But so how do you keep those boundaries?
So it's just, it's habit. Like, you keep it. And the key is, don't do it in the office. So, those days I am not in the office, because yes, can I have a minute? Can I have a minute? No, I don't have a minute. Right. And so you have to, be disciplined. And that's the whole thing, is being disciplined. If you're disciplined, and you're going to do it. It's once a week, pretty almost every week, unless if I'm going out of town or something, that's different. But for the most part, once a week. And even when I'm out of town, I'll still block off that time for myself.
One of the themes that I kind of saw throughout the book, right? One theme is you overcoming a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And the other theme that I kind of saw in there was personal demons,
mm-hmm.
right? As you use that word demons quite a bit, do you still have, maybe explain to our listeners what those demons were for you? And do you still have those?
So, yeah, I think everybody does. I call them demons, but it's the negative self-talk that's, in your head telling you, you can't do this, you can't do that, you're not good enough. Or it might be somebody else saying that, and then you believing it in your head. Right. And so, you have to, number one, be self-aware of it and know that when those triggers hit, how to cope with those. And for me, early on, the demons in my head were, you're going to be just like your father. You're going to be just like your brother. You're not going to amount to much. And I actually got that from a lot of people, thinking, because they saw how my family was. So, you're going to say the same, right? But you soon believe those lies, and you can believe those lies if you let yourself. And so the first sign is just be self-aware. Okay, what are the triggers? And how can you cope with those? And for me, again, journaling was a big thing for me to cope with. Exercise for me, I love, fitness. I love to exercise. If I'm ready to pound on somebody, I'll just go pound on a bag or something,
Awesome. I love that. Maybe could you touch on some of the, you talked about the emotional intelligence that kind of comes along with that. Are Are you transitioning or relating that to your kids in any way?
Yeah, we are. And so, I mean, it's everything that we do, we try to also teach our children. And, bullying today is a big thing in schools. And so we're teaching them how to be self-aware of that and how to cope with that. Right. And even coaching, like this weekend, Lucas had a basketball game. We all have these good and bad coaches throughout life. Right. And he just ended up with a really bad coach, and he yelled at him the entire season. And so what he wanted to do was just shrink and shrivel and cry, and me as a mom wanted to go out there and save him. But at the end of the day, it's like, if I do that, what is that teaching him? And so I let him be. And then at the end, we talk about it and say, hey, like, how can we cope with this? Like, what did you learn from this? And teaching them that you can only control what you can control, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, you can only control what you can control. Don't worry about everything else. I mean, you can hustle more out there, or you can do things to improve yourself, but that's all you can control. Don't worry about what they say, right? And so we do teach our kids that.
Now, you talk about the importance of having a daily routine. Now, would you mind expanding on why that's important, and maybe share a little bit about your daily routine?
Yeah, that's huge. For me, it's like, if I don't start it might seem boring to some people, that are not used to routines and just get out of bed and just whatever happens, happens. But, I have 5 buckets. And if I don't get these things in my buckets daily, then to me, it's not a productive day. And that is, spiritual, so I have my quiet time in the morning, fitness, and then I have family, and then of course I have business. So really 4 buckets.
You mentioned family there. Is one of the things that really jumped out at me was some of the difficulties or struggles you had with guilt, kind of when you started having children and you decided to put them in daycare instead of being a stay-at-home mom. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, it's those demons in your head saying, and it starts usually with somebody saying that, oh, like, your kids need to be home with their mom, you shouldn't be working. And women get that all the time. They can't, they think that they can't pursue their passions because they're listening to the negativity around them. And soon they believe that, and they're not pursuing their passions or dreams because of these naysayers and their guilt and the demons, stuck in their head telling them they can't do that. And so, yeah, forever I had people telling me that you shouldn't do it. And so I had these things going on my head that, you're not a great mom. You're just dropping your kids off. And I had to be, a bigger person and say, hey, you know what? Like, I'm doing this. It's my choice, not anybody else's. This is your choice, how you want to raise your kids. And if I feel this is a great path for my kids, then, that's what it's going to be.
Relating the kids and the daily routine, you'd mentioned that you guys have family reading time.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit more about, like, what that is and what you like about it.
What I like about what that is, every night. And that's part of having a routine, is that, so I get up really early in the morning to have my quiet time, work out, even and express gratitude even before I get to the office. And I feel I probably completed at least 80% of my day at that point, right? That way, when I get home at night, when I get home after work, it's all about the family. And so we have dinner together. We put our phones in the middle, and we don't look at our phones, emails, text messages. We're just simply having dinner together. And from there, we spend, 15, 20 minutes a night just reading together. They'll take their favorite books out. We'll take our favorite books out and we'll read. Sometimes, we'll read to them, or we'll read a book with them. But the whole goal is we want them, because today everybody's on their phones, and it's all about, their phones or iPads and computers. And it just drives me nuts that, they don't spend enough time doing other things. So we just made it a habit and part of our routine that's what we do.
I love that. It's a constant struggle at our house as well to get the kids away from the screens. What good books do you like? What are some of your favorite?
So a couple of them that I like is let's see, the Good to Great is good.
Yeah.
And then my other favorite one is Living with the Sill.
Oh, I haven't heard that one before. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah.
So really with that one, he's crazy, he runs in the woods and just like does some crazy things and just pushes himself beyond his limits. So it's really, overcoming the challenges, and it's really a great book.
Awesome.
One thing you had talked about when you were growing the business at the beginning, you called yourself a micromanager. But then later on in the book, you talk about how you were able to take a few months off at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's very common when we start a business, right? Especially at the beginning, we're so into it and we're controlling everything. How were you able to kind of break that out to be able to transition where you can take so much time off?
So the first thing is that we actually set a date. We said, we're taking a month off on June 21st. And we did this a year in advance, so we have a year to prepare for this. So because if you don't set a deadline, then it's never going to happen. And so that was the first thing that we did. And then we, kind of outlined it like, all right, Joni, like, what do you do daily? What do you micromanage daily that you can delegate? And so, we started doing that little by little. And then by the time once we got to, the month that we were taking off, everything was handled. The business was handled. We took off a month, enjoyed our family time, came back, and everything was great. And I think that's what it is. Us as entrepreneurs, it's so hard to let go sometimes because you feel like you can do it better. But the truth is, like, your team probably does a better job than you. They do a better job than me, that's for sure.
Right. And we're actually going through in the podcast through Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And he talks about the B as being a business owner. Right. A lot of times we start as an S, being self-employed. Right. But there's a big difference between the S and the B, because the B has the systems where they can leave for an extended period of time and the business to still run. So that's pretty cool how it honestly, really, your story is pretty cool. We really didn't dive into, we alluded to some of the addiction and some of the issues, but man, some of the situations you were put in, I mean, not only dangerous physically, but mentally. And then for you to turn that around and to build an amazing business, hats off to you.
Thank you.
So, well done.
Thank you. Yeah, it definitely wasn't easy, but, it was like kind of Cameron said, just little bits like, you just learn to adapt. And you have, when you're in those situations, you have to do what you have to do. Right. And I think if we look at that, everybody did that and said, hey, it's life or death. Like, every situation is life or death. I think we would all succeed.
And Joni, I did. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry for interrupting you, Cameron. But Joni, one thing I want to commend you for is how open you were about the issues you've had with your family. And you know what? I'm willing to bet every family in some ways has been affected by addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Rarely few do we talk about it. And the problem is when your family's hit with it, if nobody else is talking about it, you feel like, oh, like it's just me and it's taboo. We don't want to share when we think we're alone.
Right.
In all reality, many people are battling some form of addiction in some situations. So it's great that you were so open so people can see that not only is this, it's more common than it should be,
mm-hmm.
but it doesn't have to end poorly.
Exactly.
Like, you kind of showed or what I would say is the choice is yours, right? On how it ends. So that was great, Joni.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think we all, you can either be the victim or you can be the victor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's your choice and your choice only on how you want to live your life, really. So, and that was kind of my whole goal with this book is to, there are tons of people out there that are going through the same situations. And like you said, and they don't talk about it, they kind of just rub it underneath the rug and, and that's it. But I think that hopefully that'll give people enough courage to open themselves up and to do great things. Because I think we are all here for a reason. I'm a miracle child. I was, my mother was abused while she was pregnant with me. And so I had health issues all through my childhood. And so just looking at that, I'm here for a reason. Mm-hmm. And if that reason is to share my story with others, to help others overcome that,
I think we're kind of wrapping up here, but one of the things I wanted to share with our listeners was you shared a story about kind of your brother and his addiction, and how when you and Shawn were kind of first getting together, is that it was a struggle. He was asking to kind of live with you guys, and man, I'm kind of stumbling here, but what I really wanted to say was that I think over this last year, over the last 2020 and everything that's kind of happened, is that for me personally, is I've seen a lot of things happen in marriages where you need to be intentional about kind of protecting your family.
Right.
Right. And that was one of the things that I kind of took away from this book. I thought it was a great lesson on kind of you extending the invitation to him, but also kind of putting a line in the sand there and saying, hey, listen, you know what? This is affecting our marriage. I love you, brother, but we can't continue down this road. So there was a lot. That was just example of many, many lessons that were in this book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was tough, but our marriage, he was never going to change, and we saw that, and we can only, and that's the thing is you have to give tough love, if you don't do that, and it was all evident that he was not going to change, and so I was not going to lose my relationship over this. So,
how was the book been received so far?
It's good. I got a lot of great feedback. People just, most could never imagine that have known me for years that this had ever gone on. And so, it's actually kind of a load off my shoulders that now it's out there. Yeah. And I think that it can help a lot of people. There's the choice points in my book, really give, men and women practical advice on how to overcome challenges. And then, of course, the appendix is pretty good too.
Yeah, the appendix is very good. Well, the whole book is. But Joni, I was curious. You touched on in the book that for your employees, you made the choice not to do a 401k, but in turn, you wanted to provide them some financial education. You mind expanding how you came to that decision and what you're doing to help the employees?
Yeah, so we have what's called we call it noon timers. And so once every other week, we meet on a Thursday and we go over, investment strategies, whether it's wholesaling, rehabbing, flipping, whatever it is. And we will actually help our employees invest in rental properties if they want to. And partner up with them on the deal. And so we have one, employee right now that he started with us in December and he's on his third property. And so it's a way for them to reward them, and I think they're loyal to us because we're willing to help them. I don't know anywhere else that they can go that would be willing to help them like that.
Well, so why not just set up a 401k plan?
So actually, when I wrote the book, we didn't have a 401k plan, but now that we're much larger, we actually do have one. So we hired a COO this year, and so he put all that together for us. But so we do have one, and then also in addition to that, we have investment opportunities for our employees.
What'd you call it? Nooners?
Nooners.
I like that. Do you guys order in Taco Bell?
We should. Normally it's they bring their own lunch in, it's like kind of lunch and learn type of thing. But yeah, it's great. Because we have about 18 remote team members, and all in all, we probably have about 50, employees. And so they all Zoom in together, and that's what we do.
What a great opportunity. You guys should list that on the list of benefits before you're hiring somebody.
Yeah, that's true.
Is mentorship with the Nooners. I like that.
Yeah.
Because now with these employees, and now they're making it where it's almost you have to elect out of the 401k, right? As soon as you're hired, they're trying to make it where you're part of the 401k. And one of the downsides is, well, they're not learning about investing.
Right.
They're just blindly putting their money somewhere and they don't know. I appreciate that you're taking that time to educate the employees, and which is kind of like what I do with Cameron. Like about every other Friday, I give him some financial education and reach him.
Nice. No, I agree, because we have the ones that are on the 401k plan, because you can either opt in, opt out, and we're noticing that very few are even getting it. They don't understand it. They're so it seems like the younger generation is not taking it.
Joni, congratulations on adding author to your long list of titles and accolades that you have. If our listeners are looking for this book, the choice is yours. Where can they find it? So
they can find it on Amazon. That's pretty much the only place you can get it. So if you have, they can find me on Instagram, Facebook, on all those platforms.
Awesome. And your podcast. Let's give your podcast a plug.
Yeah, podcast is Inside the Wolf's Den, and it's with my husband Shawn and myself.
And I've never been in a Nooners meeting, but I've listened to the podcast. I feel like they're probably pretty similar. There's a lot of really good education, a really good whole bunch of value that you guys provide in that. So if you guys are listening, make sure you guys go subscribe.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, Joni, thanks a lot for hopping on our podcast and for putting your heart and soul in this book. And I know that you're going to help some men and women around the country with that. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate you guys having me on the podcast.
Absolutely.
You got it. Now go make it a fantastic day.
Take care.